Hi there. Welcome to Evil Riffs, your digital journal club about all things evolutionary. I'm Ronald Jenner, and today I'm going to record the first episode ever of Evil Riffs. And today is special for another reason because we are here in my office of the Natural History Museum in South Kensington in London. Over the last year and a half, I've been here only a handful of times, so today is exciting for me as well. Now, I'm going to lead this digital journal club, and you might wonder, well, what does Ronald know about the scientific literature? Does he have the credentials to do this stuff at all? Well, therefore, I thought perhaps as the first episode, I can do a little summary about some details about myself to show that, yes, indeed, I do have the credentials, perhaps, to discuss the scientific literature with you. If you're not interested in any details about me, which is quite possible, then I hear there is other stuff on the internet, so you can just go to another video. But in case you are interested, the accent that you hear is from the Netherlands. I've been in the UK since 2002. I did my undergraduate degree at the University of Utrecht. And as I see, actually, I've got a memento in my office, this painting there of, well, no prize for anybody who guesses who that is. Yes, it is Charles Darwin. It was given to me by a friend I had as an undergraduate in Utrecht, and uh, if you look at this painting, it's actually two paintings. He was an art student before, my friend Mark Tummers, and he actually painted a beautiful naked lady, but then he painted it over with this portrait of an old bearded man, and that's a present that he gave to me. So, yeah, thank you, Mark. After I did my undergraduate degree in Utrecht, I went to the University of Amsterdam. I did my PhD there in the erstwhile Zoological Museum. It doesn't exist anymore. That place has now become fused with Naturalis, the Natural History Museum in Leiden in the Netherlands. And I finished my PhD there in 2002. I then moved to Cambridge to do a postdoc research project for 2 years in the lab of Max Telford, and he is currently at UCL, University College London, where he is a professor. And then I took a gap year, as some people do. I did it quite late in life. I was in my 30s. I decided to follow my girlfriend, with whom I'd had a long distance relationship, all the way to California. And there it quickly turned out that doing a long distance relationship is sometimes better than doing a close up relationship. So after 4 months of being together in an apartment in Davis, I had to move to the guest room. And I remember this well because as I was setting up the guest bed there, we at that point had bought a dog, and the dog walked into the room with me and looked around and then turned around and walked out and jumped on the bed in the master bedroom with my girlfriend, or at that moment, my very freshly ex girlfriend. And that was it. So after 6 months in California, 2 months in the guest room, I went back to the Netherlands. But by that point, I didn't have an apartment in Amsterdam anymore. I had to move in with my mom, which was a bit of a shock for the both of us. I worked as a tourist guide in Aalsmeer, in the largest flower auction of the world. And then I got an email from Matthew Wills, who's a professor at the University of Bath, a paleontologist, and he said, Ron, do you know anybody who could do a postdoc with me to study crustacean evolution? I said, yeah, can it be me? And he said, yes, it can be you. So I applied for that job. I got the job luckily, and that got me back into science. And of course, science is the best thing. If you have the privilege to be a scientific researcher, really, you can do many other jobs as a tryout, as I did, but it's really the best career in the world. Now, after my time in Bath, I came to London in 2009 in February. My very first day here, I couldn't come in. It snowed so hard that I couldn't leave my apartment. At that point, I didn't even have television. I didn't have a landline. We had just moved in the apartment for I think 5 days. I don't think my girlfriend at the time was even there. She was still in New Zealand. She's a Kiwi, and we had been visiting her family there. So my beginning at the museum was quite inauspicious. The first, I think, 2 or 3 days, I couldn't even get in because all the public transport in London was completely knocked out. Now, before I arrived here, my research had always focused on deep animal evolution. Questions like what is the structure of the phylogenetic tree of the animal kingdom? When I did my postdoc in Bath, I was interested in questions relating to crustacean evolution and the deep phylogenetic relationships of these creatures. But when I came here, although it didn't lose my interest in these points, I also started working on something else. I have been working now for the last 8 or 9 years on the evolution of venoms, especially in invertebrates. This is why my office has things like this. You can see it's a centipede, a decapitated one, because when we are done with our research, we will have removed the business ends of these creatures so we can actually harvest the venom and the venom glands to do our stuff. And also worms, you can see this is a polychaete annelid, a venomous worm, a marine creature that uses its venom to subdue its prey. So these are two of the groups of creatures that I work on and that I'm very interested in. We also wrote a book titled, unsurprisingly, Venom. I co-wrote this with my friend Ivan Untheim, who's seen here, showcasing the book. It's available in English. It's also available in the Japanese and a Dutch translation, as you can see here. And that's quite a funny story. With the Dutch translation, and I could, of course, have written it in Dutch, but I didn't. I wrote it in English. It was translated by someone else. When the Dutch translation came out and the publisher sent me a book, it was already signed. It was signed Veel leesplezier, Freek. I was like, Freek? Who the hell is Freek? So then I browsed, and the first page of the book showed this beautiful guy here uh, who is being held by Freek Vonk. Freek Vonk is a famous biologist in the Netherlands, and he's a very enthusiastic, charismatic TV personality. And I guess to help promote the sales of the book, they had asked him to write a foreword, and actually he did a book signing about our book. So when I received the first Dutch copy of our book, it was already signed by a dude who hadn't actually signed it. But thank you, Freek. You probably helped sell the book in the Netherlands. But then I sent a copy to my mom. She was not impressed at all. She called me up and said, Ronald, Freek Vonk from the television is in your book. What the hell does he have to do with your book at all? I said, Mom, I know. No, Ronald, it's not. There's not even a photograph of you or Ivan. It's just him holding a Gila monster. I said, yeah, but Mom, that's probably a commercial strategy to help sell the books. She never accepted that. She, to the day of her death a few years later, talked badly about Freek. So it's not his fault, but that that's how it goes. Moms are quite protective even of their sons when they are in their 40s. Now, um, I've been publishing in the scientific literature since 1998. That's the year that my first two papers were published. One was titled The Hierarchical Organization and the Structural Interactive Hierarchy. It was published in the Journal of Theoretical Biology, and it's as boring a read as it sounds. I wrote this because I was already at that point reading the literature quite widely. And this was written by the father of a mate of mine, Lex Nederbracht, and his dad had published a paper in the same journal that I thought was interesting but completely conceptually flawed. It was bollocks. So I wrote a letter to the editor, and to my surprise, but also to my joy, it was published. So that was my first paper uh, that introduced me to the arena of scientific debate. Most scientific papers, of course, are published because they publish discoveries, they publish the results of scientists feeling around Mother Nature's rump to check out what kind of shapes she has. But sometimes papers, and especially for young scientists, if you're new to the field, uh, entering the scientific literature with papers that are essentially opinion pieces in which you can write what you think and engage with other scientists in scientific debate can be extremely rewarding. Not if you type this paper into the Web of Science, because no one has ever cited it in the 23 years of its existence. But as I came to the office today, I looked in my collection of these things. These are reprint requests from former times. When I published this paper, and this was in the time when digital literature was not widely available, if people wanted to read another researcher's paper, they would just send them a card like this. So I got one from Argentina and from Germany and from France, where people asked for a reprint of the paper. And that was a time very different from now, where you would go to the pigeonhole and you would find that people from all over the world had seen your paper advertised, wanted to have a copy. Maybe their university didn't have a subscription to the journal. Maybe they're too lazy to go and copy it themselves, so they would ask you directly. So you got that real sense of engagement, that you're part of a scientific community where people actually personally send you postcards to request copies of your work. get a very much more positive feeling than now when such requests may come in email. Nobody opens their inbox in the morning going, "Ooh, I'm so excited to see what I'm going to find." All it does is raise your blood pressure and make you go, "Oh, there's so many things I should be dealing with." So that was something. If you entered science after the year 2000, you may not have experienced sending or receiving reprint requests like this. In my collection, the last ones I received were in the year 2004, which also coincides with the start uh, of my gap year. Now, these two papers, I mentioned two papers. This was one paper. The same year, I published another paper in the Contributions to Zoology. That was a real research paper. It was a description of fossil crustaceans from the Carboniferous and a phylogenetic analysis to figure out how these creatures related to each other and to living crustaceans in the same group, namely the mantis shrimps. And I was very proud because in that paper I described a new species called Tyrannophontus acanthocercus, which roughly translated, and I don't have a traditional classical education, as the terrible shrimp with the spiny tail. Now, almost, well, less than 10 years later, my supervisor, Fred Schramm, um, changed the name of this species and recalling the genus Didel. So my species that I described and of which I was so proud doesn't exist anymore as a name. So thank you, Fred, you asshole. Fred here in this picture is the man on the right with the white mustache. Oh, I'm just joking. We are good friends. Um, and since in the past 23 years, I've published quite a few papers, certainly pages. One of the fattest things I ever published was this paper, 160 pages in Contributions to Zoology, very lengthy title, Towards a Phylogeny of the Metazoa, Evaluating Alternative Phylogenetic Positions of Platyhelminthes, Nemertia, and Gnatostomylida with a critical reappraisal of cladistic characters. Are you bored yet? I can just imagine the pain it must have caused for Martin Sørensen, a biologist in Denmark who was sweet enough or stupid enough or arm twisted into it to review this monstrous manuscript. This is not the first journal I sent it to. I was at the time in Cambridge doing my postdoc, and I actually printed out the 3 copies of double-spaced manuscript for this monster, which was a pile of paper this high, and I've put it in an empty printed paper box. And I marched it from the Zoological Museum in Cambridge to the offices of the Biological Reviews of the Cambridge Philosophical Society, which is just around the corner. And I walked in, and before I could say anything, somebody looked up and said, "Oh, yeah, just put it down there." And I had to say, "No, I'm not bringing you printer paper. I'm submitting this." And they said, "Oh, you're doing that." Well, it wasn't very long after I had gotten back to the museum that I got a rejection slip saying, "Yeah, no, we don't publish papers that will amount to an entire issue." So it was a bit of searching before I found contributions to zoology who would publish monographs like this. Um, at the time, I think this has had something like 700 references in it. I didn't use any endnotes or any reference management software, so I know that the managing editor Ronald Fonk was not very happy with my submission because I misformatted the references. The amount of work it cost him to put it right in the right format was not insubstantial. Now, that just goes to show I've contributed my fair share to the scientific literature. It's the intellectual ecosystem in which all scientists live. We contribute from it, but we also use it as a buffet from which we, you know, satisfy a curiosity about the natural world. It's our hardware shop as well, where we find the tools with which we can tackle the questions that we are interested in answering. So it really is our intellectual ecosystem, and I've always felt at home in it. And that's why I wanted to start this particular channel, because interestingly, not many people who themselves are not scientists may read the scientific literature, not even in this day of open access publications. And one reason is that a lot of the scientific papers are either too jargon ridden to be readable for people generally interested, but not themselves specialists, or they're written like crap. There is a lot of good scientific papers out there, but there's also a lot of literature that, how shall we phrase this, has not been obviously written to provide any pleasurable reading experience. Now, I just see that I've been talking already for about 15 minutes, so I will make sure that the alarm doesn't go off. I don't want to, oh, I didn't set the timer. Well, that's good. I don't want to make this too long because in a normal journal club, there will be a to and fro of opinions. And here, sadly, you will just have me talking all the time. So if you're interested in discussing the scientific literature with me, thinking about cool papers, this is your channel. If you like this, watch my videos, subscribe to them so you get an alert when I have something new to riff on. And just to give you a teaser, if you come back at the next episode, the first episode in which I will actually discuss a scientific paper, I want to discuss a paper from Current Biology from earlier this year, published by Taro Nojiri et al. It's titled Embryonic Evidence Uncovers Convergent Origins of Laryngeal Echolocation in Bats. Now, I don't give a flying fig about bats, but this is a very interesting paper because despite the title, the results that they present are not at all clear cut. And so to discuss the interesting structure of this paper and the shakiness of their conclusions, despite them being published in a high impact journal, will be the meat for the next episode. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time. For now, ciao.